Everybody knows that we are recording, just FYI. Cheryl Mollohan is our honored speaker here today. She has over 40 years of experience in wildlife biology. She was the lead on, let me get this right name here, with the urban bobcat study here in Tucson, where they spent over 4 years finding out what are those bobcats doing when we're not looking. She was the lead investigator on that study. They captured 56 bobcats, collared 49 of them, all right here in Tucson. So she is going to share some of her fascinating discoveries about these beautiful animals. And so take it away, Cheryl.
Thank you. So thanks, Deb, and thanks so much for having me. I love to talk about bobcats. It's a good place to be. Okay, so as Deb said, my name's Cheryl Mollohan. I'm a certified wildlife biologist. This has been my career. Happily, this part is very much a labor of love. It was always on my lifeless to be able to work on wild cats, and I was finally able to accomplish that beginning in 2010 in Ohio, and then out to Tucson in 2018. I'm actually back in Ohio, working on a bobcat study there now, and for further confusion for everybody, you can probably tell I'm in a tent. We just got back to Arizona last night. We're camped up by the Grand Canyon. So this is courtesy of a Starlink mini system that I'm here today, which is still amazing to me. So anyway, happy to be here. So let's talk about bobcats. First of all, this was a large group of us. There were five of us who are retired game and fish biologists that started the project. And then along the way, we added an amazing group of other people. We are all volunteers, very much a labor of love for all of us, um, and still is for that matter. We had wonderful collaboration with the University of Arizona. We had three graduate students that we worked with, which was just an added bonus for us. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. The initial funding was provided by the Heritage Fund, which is lottery dollars for wildlife. So if you buy lottery tickets, you contribute to wildlife in Arizona, which is a wonderful program. That was the starter grant. We actually raised almost 2.5 times from private donations what we got from Game and Fish. Everything from large donations from Tucson Vice Mayor Kevin Dahl's office to private donors to $25 donations. And so we had a very broad base of support. We were very lucky because we were independent, not working for a university or an agency, to be umbrellaed under the Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center up in Scottsdale, which allowed us to do things like put in for grants, like the Heritage Grant. Um, this was a very broad-based, community-based study. We had many, many people involved, many people who provided us support, allowed us to capture bobcats on their property. The very first year, we figured out very quickly the bobcats showed us where they spent most of their time, which was at houses. And so knocking on someone's door and asking to catch bobcats in their backyard is a neat experience. And almost no one said no, which was very gratifying. Also, and I'll talk about this as I go along, and I suspect some of you probably contributed to this, and this continues today through our website, bobcatsintucson.net. You can send in bobcat activity reports. I still get a couple a day, and I answer all of them, by the way. And then we also had on our website a opinion and attitude survey, which we have completed. But that was another thing. So we had a lot of community participation and tremendous support from the community. So our objectives were very straightforward. The first one was really, we have such an amazing resource in our Tucson Bobcats, and they're so unique. And really, I wanted to look at where there were issues and try to develop strategies to help reduce conflict. And I'll talk about that as I go along. The other thing was, and to say that bobcats are watchable wildlife is a very unique situation because if you, I suspect most of you are hikers, given the group, and most of us have never seen a bobcat in the wild. I guarantee you bobcats have seen you, but they're very good at not being seen. Here in Tucson, they really don't have that choice, and which is to all of our benefit, to get to see a bobcat in what they consider their natural habitat, which happens to be Tucson. And then finally, as a biologist, we always try to build on what we've learned from other people, from other studies. And so we very much wanted to add to what we know about urban bobcats, bobcats in general, but definitely urban bobcats. Those were our objectives. I mentioned that we had 1,500 surveys of people on our website. Originally, this was going to be in a neighborhood where we had a radio-collared bobcat. Our study started at the same time as COVID, and we very quickly abandoned being able to knock on doors. So we ended up going with the website. I actually think it worked to our benefit because we've had, since we started the study in the fall of 2020, 76,000 visits to our website. And we still get about 1,000 a month. So I think it really worked out to our benefit. But people could go there and take the survey. We used those results, and they were overwhelmingly positive, by the way. About 90% people were very favorable. The negative comments were almost always grounded in fear for people's safety, for their pets, domestic livestock, especially chickens. We used that information to develop a series of handouts, and I'll highlight these as I go through, about living with bobcats. How do you live with bobcats? And to try to answer some of those questions and give people some strategies. Some people want bobcats in their backyard, and some people do not. So we tried to help on either side of that as much as we could. So I'll talk about those as we go along. And I'll mention this again at the end, but all of the materials that I'll show you are all available for download on our website. So you can download them to your computer. I mentioned already that we ask people to send us information if they saw a bobcat, and they could go to our website and click on Report a Bobcat. You can still do that. This is what we got, which is amazing. All of these orange dots are people sending in sightings, experiences, whatever it happened to be. This is actually our study area where we captured our bobcats, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as you can see, bobcats are very widespread in Tucson, and I actually think some of these areas have filled in since I updated this. I really think by and large they have infiltrated almost all of Tucson, which is remarkable. Um, have almost seamlessly adapted to living across much of Greater Tucson with relatively little conflict. This, by the way, is a building density map. So you can see less than 100 structures per square kilometer, all the way up to the darkest, which is 1,000 to 1,500. And notice this cluster right here. This is basically Grant and Campbell. And one of the reasons that I think that this will eventually fill in is this happens to be a person that was very involved with game and fish, and someone that I spoke with quite a bit. And we see these little clusters. Here's one of the people who was part of our study. And so I think there are bobcats in almost all of these areas. It's more just a reporting issue. But I still am amazed to be at Grant and Campbell and know that bobcats live there and have lived there for quite a few years. So this was remarkable. Oh, and by the way, let me back up. One thing that's different about Tucson is in most areas that have bobcats, they are just around the edges where the wildland meets the city. So you can see, of course, Tucson is surrounded by Tucson Mountain Park, Saguaro National Park, so on and so forth. What is different about our bobcats is they have truly integrated into to most of Tucson. As I mentioned, we asked people to send in information across all of Tucson. We did pick a capture area or study area. This was on the west side. This is the Gates Pass area. The reason that we picked this area, excuse me, a couple reasons. One is you notice all the different colors. So there was Tucson Mountain Park land, there's county land, there's cities land, there's Saguaro National Park, and then there is various levels of urbanization. So we tried to get as much diversity as we could in our study area. We went from very high quality Sonoran Desert to a variety of levels of urbanization, and also some golf courses. And we focuses particularly on Star Pass Golf Course, and actually caught several bobcats there. We ended up adding, actually increasing our study area. This is based on what the bobcats showed us, and that was the importance of the Santa Cruz River drainage to bobcats. And so in our third year, we increased our study area so that we could specifically, the last year of the study, focus on the Santa Cruz River and how our bobcats use the river basin. The other reason that we picked this study area is because as you go towards Tucson from west to east, you notice the topography. Of course, this is the Tucson Mountains. It flattens out as you go into Tucson. So topography decreases and urbanization increases. So it really gave us a wide dichotomy of habitat types to look at over a gradient. We captured along that wildlands urban interface, and then slowly moved our way east. And this is a bobcat in a cage. This is a custom built cage that we use for research, and we had no injuries of any kind. And sometimes they would get a scratch on their nose from trying to get out, but they worked very well. They were very safe for us and the bobcat. How do you catch a bobcat? Well, a cat is a cat is a cat. You'll hear me say this a few times in this program. It is the same way that you would catch your house cat, a bobcat, a mountain lion, a tiger. It's all based on the same premise, and that is cats are nosy. So if there is something new in their environment, something that catches their attention, it might be visual, like this stuffed bunny. This is a piece of a road-killed rabbit. There's a little mouse back here, a little toy mouse like that your house cat would play with. There are a variety of scents and lures back here. Anything to get them to step in the cage. And these sticks encourage them to step over. When they step on this treadle, the door closes, and if all goes well, when you come to check your cage the next morning, you have a very unhappy bobcat. They are not the least bit happy, but they are safe and secure. We checked our traps every single morning. Um, we were very lucky to have Dr. Erica Johnson of the Arizona Exotic Animal Hospital as part of our team. This is her and Dr. Lacey Klein. They attended every single one of our captures. We had 68 captures, and it was a huge safety net for us. They handled the drugs. These are all scheduled drugs, so as an independent researcher, it's a challenge for me to be able to possess these drugs and handle these drugs. They were wonderful veterinarians, and it was great to have them as part of our team. Once the animal was asleep, we had about 50 minutes to get all of our work done. So everybody had a job. It was all hands on deck, and we collected as much information as we could. One of the things that I believe as a biologist is that if you're going to put an animal through having to go through this process, we gather absolutely every bit of information we can, because we don't get our hands on bobcats all that often. And so we really tried to gather a lot of information. This is the radio collar that they were fitted with. This is a satellite radio collar. It is amazingly sophisticated. They were $2,600 each. from a company actually up in Mesa, which was really neat to get to work with a local company. It has, this is a GPS unit. It has a schedule that I give it, anywhere from every 30 minutes to every other day. It will turn itself on, take a location, and then it sends me that data. This is what's called a breakaway unit, and this is pre-programmed with a date, and it also can communicate with me if for some reason there's something wrong with the caller. It will reach out and say, you need to drop the caller right now. We have a fatal error. And when I give that command, there's a little charge in this, and it just pops the collar open and then it falls off. So everybody who wore a collar, all their collars came off. No one has to wear a dead collar. There are no collared Bobcats in Tucson at this time. It worked perfectly. And then we went around and picked the collars up. So, and the other thing that it would do, if it didn't move for 4 hours, it would send me an email that said you have a mortality. And then I could go out and try to figure out if we did in fact have a bobcat that had been killed, what had happened to it. We collected a lot of samples. We collected blood, hair, DNA, fresh droppings. I mentioned already the students from U of A. We did a kinship study, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We looked at diet. We have a student who looked at roads. How do bobcats interact with roads? So we really tried to gather as much information as possible. We looked at viruses, the kinds of viruses that the bobcats have. Um, and so Deb mentioned we caught 56 different bobcats between November 2020 and December 2023. We did recatch some. We did recollar some. Some, for whatever reason, were easier to catch than others. And we caught 24 females, and we radio collared all of our females. 25 males. We did not radio collar all of the males. And that's because, first of all, if females aren't surviving and raising kittens, you aren't going to have a population. And so the females, we prioritize the females because we can learn so much more from them than we can the males. In retrospect, if I would have had enough callers to be able to collar everybody, I would have liked to have been able to do that, but I wasn't able to do that. So we had 10 males that we released uncollared. And then these were kittens primarily, or young of the year, or bobcats that were too small to wear a radio collar. And we just turned them loose. These are locations. Those 39 bobcats that we radio collared provided us with about 53,000 locations, accurate GPS locations. So all of different colors. These are all of our bobcat locations. And I always point out to everyone that these two areas, it is not that they don't have bobcats. I truly believe they do. This area is down in the Santa Cruz, and it was just there were a lot of homeless people. There was a lot of activity, and my team was not comfortable trying to catch bobcats there. We had this female captured, and we had used up our last radio collar. We caught two females in one day, so this will always bother me because I didn't get to catch her. But you can see we have a lot of bobcats, and this isn't just our study area. This applies across much of Tucson. One of the things that I was most amazed about is our female home ranges, as you can see, literally look like puzzle pieces. They overlap a little bit, but by and large, a female is exclusive in her home range. Okay, so this area is hers and hers alone. There are males there, but as far as the females go, they're very distinctive. And just to give you a perspective on size, so once settled into a home range, they typically stay here their whole life. Somewhere between average about 3 square miles, and ranged from a little under 1.5 up to about 8 square miles. So quite a bit of variation. This is our largest home range. This was Bobcat Nala, and she lived in the Santa Cruz River. And you can see she just ran up and down the Santa Cruz River. Our smallest home range was Bobcat Mini, 1.35 square miles. This female is unique in that she shifted her home range. She initially lived here, and when we changed her radio collar, well, she actually moved before we changed her radio collar, but she ended up moving over into the Santa Cruz River drainage. That's pretty unusual. This is here because the piece that we contributed to our basic knowledge of bobcats is that we had mothers and daughters, adult mothers and daughters, who were sharing home ranges. And this is something that had been suspected but not proven before. And this happens to be, and you can see the daughter's home range is on top. The blue is the daughter, and the mother is a little bit of orange that you can see. So there was a great deal of overlap. Um, this was our first scientific publication. This was one of our grad students from U of A. And in fact, she did the kinship study and showed the home range sharing between mother-daughters. So this was our contribution to what we know about bobcats. Oops. The male ranges average 7.6 square miles, so about 2.5 times as big as the female. They overlap tremendously with each other and with females. So females are exclusive unless they share with a daughter. Males overlap extensively. This is Bobcat Braden. He was our largest male. He weighed 27.15 pounds. I forgot to mention the females weighed from 12 to 25. 25 was an outlier. Most of them were under 17 pounds. So they're much smaller than most people think. He also had the largest home range, and his home range overlapped with 7 different females. He was a player for sure. Um, Typically, a female will have 1 or 2 resident males and then a couple males that periodically visit a home range. He was unique in that he used a huge area and overlapped with 7 of our females. The smallest home range, Bobcat Jonathan, um, and he actually lived on a Star Pass golf course. So here's Braden again. Here's another one of our Santa Cruz River cats. You can see they really lived in the river drainage. This was 2 males. They were unrelated, but their home ranges overlapped extensively. Basically, we've always thought that you could talk about habitat quality based on the size of a home range. Ours are fairly small when you compare them to bobcat studies in other places. In both cases, the smallest home range was on the Star Pass golf course. We did not see a clear relationship to say, gee, the bobcats that lived in more undeveloped areas, home ranges were smaller versus those who lived in the most developed areas. There really was no relationship like that at all. It was a real mixed bag. So urbanization in itself does not drive a larger or smaller home range. One of the things that I guess I was most surprised about, and the Bobcats showed us this right out of the box, is that by and large, they spent most of their time near buildings, near houses, especially the females. So in order to show selection, we had 53,000 Bobcat locations. We generated 53,000 random locations so we could make a comparison. We looked at the statistics, and one of the things that was interesting was the Bobcat location was significantly closer to a building and to a wash, which I would have predicted, versus a random location. Building densities were significantly higher at Bobcat locations. So they were not avoiding human structures. They were not avoiding houses. They were not avoiding people. In fact, they were selecting for those building densities. Random locations significantly closer to major roads and parks or recreation areas. And this is a little misleading because it's ball fields, soccer fields, things like that, which I would expect them to avoid if they could, just because of the disturbance factor. It wasn't like what we think of as green space, for instance. Um, just an example of how they used washes. This was one of our females. She actually used the Star Pass. This is Anclam Road. And you can see her crossing Greasewood Park. If you've been there, it's a very busy park from a human standpoint. There are a lot of trails. And you can see she used the wash to travel. I think our intact washes are very important to bobcats in Tucson. Um, and I think it's one of the reasons that they're able to survive in some of the parts of the city that surprise us a little bit. But notice where her locations are. They're in these little green spaces, but often in association with houses or neighborhoods. This is one of our females, actually, before we caught her, Bobcat Carrie. And I think perhaps the most important thing we learned um, is that, and this is a paradigm shift, that these bobcats were likely born into an urban environment. So human structures are all they've ever known. They're just being bobcats and blooming where they were planted, which hopefully we do too. They don't distinguish between natural and human made. It's something that we distinguish, but they do not. So when we see a bobcat walking a wall or lounging on a fence, or she's right here, and here she is, you can see her peeking out. She has kittens up here, by the way. We think of it, wow, look at that bobcat on that wall. And the bobcat doesn't look at it that way at all. It's simply a structure. They do not distinguish between human-made structures. I always tell people, they're like, why are they in my backyard? Why are they close to my house? And I say, to them, your house is like a rock pile that people live in. It isn't a house. It isn't something that they don't make that distinguishment. And I think that's an important thing to remember. This is hands down one of my favorite pictures. See, this is Bobcat Avery and her three kittens. And it's definitely, if you build it, they will come. The little boy who lived here was over the moon that the Bobcat kittens had come and played on his trampoline. So again, a good place to take a nap. The person who sent me these photographs, he was a wonderful photographer. He had captioned the email as "Everyone deserves good lawn furniture." So she was certainly taking advantage of it and enjoying it. So much of Greater Tucson, with low to medium building densities, native vegetation, and intact washes, offers excellent bobcat habitat. And you can see, as I mentioned, much of Tucson, and I truly believe this would fill in over time. I do think there are a couple things that make it even better habitat for bobcats. One is water. If you have ground level water or wildlife water that they can access. And the other thing is that bird feeders that attract birds, it just provides them a hunting spot. And we had lots of situations. This is one of our females hunting at a bird feeder. This kitten, the homeowner actually saw the female jump up on the fence, hang by her elbows on the fence, grab the dove, and come down and give it to the kitten. So that was his first wild meal, if you will. And then water sources, swimming pools, something that they can access, ground level water of some sort. A bobcat is a bobcat is a bobcat. I have no doubt that the results from our study here apply all across Tucson. So people keep saying, gee, I wish you could come study our bobcats on the east side or the north side. Your bobcats are our bobcats. I feel very comfortable that the results would be the same. I would have liked to have been able to study these bobcats that live in the densest part of Tucson. And it was actually something we requested, and Game and Fish wasn't willing to let us do that. So I would have liked to have seen if there were differences where these guys are in these really heavily urbanized areas. I mentioned that mortalities are part of the study. We had 12 mortalities out of our 38 radioed bobcats. All of the deaths were human related. Two were directly related to predation on chickens. In both cases, the chickens were free ranging in a backyard. Bobcats were trying to catch them, and the homeowner shot the bobcat. Um, we had three illegal kills. One was very high profile, shot by a former deputy sheriff, and he was actually convicted. Two unknown. I don't know why they were shot and killed, but they were. We assumed they're illegal because in both cases the collars were cut off and thrown away. Um, it was 50-50 between humans shooting bobcats and getting hit by cars. Two assumed and three verified vehicle strikes. We did have one bobcat who died after he died within a few days of us handling him. The vets did an autopsy on him. He was a healthy bobcat. We were simply never able to determine why he died or if it was study related. Everything seemed perfectly normal. So we're not sure about that one. And then one that we weren't able to 100% say was a vehicle, but I'm pretty sure it was based on where it was located. So happily, mortality decreased over the course of the study. This is unsupportable, 60%, 4% mortality. So if you look at this from the standpoint of on an annual basis, the percent chance that the bobcat has of dying, so a 64% mortality rate, we had 100 bobcats, 64 of them would die in the course of that year. This is not sustainable for a population. Year two and year three, it dropped down 16%, 15%. The third year, which is sustainable for a population. Vehicle strikes occurred at each year, but they did decrease as the study progressed. Human-caused deaths decreased as the study progressed as well to 0 in year three. Within the first 6 weeks of starting, we had lost 3 in this first year, and I wasn't sure we were going to be able to have a study. Even though the number of radio-collared bobcats increased over the course of the study, mortalities decreased. We hope this was due to us raising awareness, people slowing down, paying more attention, finding out that if you do in fact kill a bobcat illegally, that you can be prosecuted. Roads and bobcats, so it's amazing. They live in a very, very dangerous environment. They average 7-point roads a day they cross. They did avoid, Silver Bell was, on the east side of our study area, and they did avoid major roads such as Silver Bell. So in other words, they used them less than expected. A little bit of avoidance towards minor roads, but it really wasn't significant. They did not detour to go over a crossing structure or through a culvert or an underpass. If it was on their path, they used it, but they didn't make a special detour. They basically crossed roads as they came to them. This is just an example of how dangerous an environment they do live in. This was Bobcat Hal, and he lived over in the Gates Pass area off of Camino del Cerro, or I'm sorry, Camino de Este and Ironwood Hills. And in his 11 months, he crossed roads 1,983 times. So all of these red lines are his paths. All of the yellow are places that he crossed a road. In that period of time, he crossed Camino de Este 133 times. He got killed the 76th time that he crossed Ironwood Hills Drive, which was heartbreaking. And so roads are a huge issue for our bobcats. One of the main questions we ask, because this seemed to be where so much of the fear focused for people in Tucson, was do bobcats prey on pets or domestic livestock? And we found very little evidence of this. Almost no evidence of dogs. I think they avoid dogs. Cats don't like dogs. Very little evidence of cats. In both cases, the 2 cats that people did report were in backyards, basically unattended. I already mentioned chickens. Chickens a huge issue for bobcats. It's like sending a big red light in the sky that says chickens here. If I could do one thing, it would be to make it so that people didn't have chickens in Tucson. And I ask people, how many bobcats is a chicken worth? Because if you kill that bobcat, as you saw from our map, there are no open areas that will get taken up by another bobcat. This is typical food habits. Rabbits, bobcats are very closely aligned with rabbits, so somewhere between 75 and 85% of their diet. Doves, probably doves primarily, make up another big chunk, 15% or so. And then cats, dogs, chickens, rodents, quite a bit below that. So I mentioned the chickens. This was Bobcat Dave. He was shot illegally by a homeowner. He cut his collar off and threw it in a trash can. And he had chickens running everywhere on his property. He was not prosecuted. This is a female and two big kittens. They weren't able to get in, by the way. They spent a couple hours there, but they didn't get in. This is Bobcat Braden. I'm sorry, that's not right. This is Bobcat Jonathan. He was also shot and killed, um, and not prosecuted because he was stalking chickens in someone's yard. We did come up with a series of suggestions of people, primarily pets and chickens, but really focuses on chickens. And I still talk with people on a fairly often basis about how to deal with bobcats and chickens. There's no way to explain to the bobcat that this large, good smelling, fluffy, yummy tasting bird that happens to be placed in his home is not for him. That is simply not able to convey that to a bobcat. It's really our responsibility to keep our chickens and our pets away from bobcats. Females and kittens, this was a wonderful part of the study. We learned so much. They're such wonderful mothers. Um, so they're born primarily in the spring. 77% of the births occur during the spring kitten season. They can have kittens any time of the year. If they lose this litter, they'll very quickly rebreed and try to have kittens again. So we saw kittens in January, we saw kittens in December. Most of the kittens are born in the spring. One of the things that was most interesting to us, again, going back to this map, when we started our trapping, we trapped on this boundary and then we slowly moved east. So each successive year, we had more and more buildings, more urbanization, and less topography. Topography is cover for bobcats. Okay, so if you can use a steep area, a rocky area, we moved from west to east each year, from more to less terrain, and lower to higher building densities. And that first year, 4 of our 5 radio-collared females picked literally the steepest, rockiest, nastiest spot in their home range. These were all bobcats that backed up to Tucson Mountain Park. In this case, she was on Star Pass Golf Course. They all had their kittens in these steep, rocky areas. This was our female on Tumamoc. So here's the observatory. This is a nasty spot. I was there. We could not get close to her. It was just a really nasty spot. And she denned and kept her kittens in this kind of habitat every year. She wore a collar for 3 years. This is Dos Picos. This is another one of our females. She spent less than 4% of her time on the mountain, less than 5% of her time before she had kittens, and more than 50% while she was raising her kitty. That's such a cute kitten. And you can see all of these locations. This is her den site. She did use the same den site. We did see that with a number of our females that they would return to the same den site. As we moved further east, they used roofs. This female kept her kittens up on the roof for 6 weeks, had them on the roof, kept them on the roof for 6 weeks before she brought them down. They stashed them in alleys. They had them in washes. Sometimes they were just under a pile of vegetation or in a hedgerow. It was a very, very dangerous time for them and for the kittens. So very similar development to domestic house cats. Um, Typically, the first 4 to 6 weeks, they're going to hide the kittens someplace and then sneak in and out. And then they'll move them to what they consider a secure site. If you're lucky enough to be one of these kitten houses, we had females that would return year and after year to the same backyard. Typically, a high wall. It gives them some security against predators, coyotes, dogs, other bobcats. Lots of vegetation, ground level water, a bird feeder, a tree for the kittens to climb, also for them to get up on the roof. Very typical for a kitten house. This was one strategy, and this is Bobcat Avery. This was caught on this guy's doorbell. She's moving her kitties from where she had them to where she's going to raise them. This is a very dangerous endeavor for her. This is how you end up with abandoned kittens. If someone startles her, she may drop the kitten and run. People pick the kittens up. It's just leave the kitten alone if you ever come into that situation. She took them back here and she raised kittens here for 3 years in a row. Um, this was 2025, and we are fairly sure that this is her daughter who has come back and now raises kittens in the same den that Avery had her kittens in. Um, this is just some footage. They are wonderful mothers. This is Bobcat Avery again. She was one of our most urban females, kind of the star of the show. And I think people who are lucky enough to have a female choose their backyard to have kittens is just nothing short of amazing to get to watch her. She's a completely wild bobcat. She's just doing what bobcats do. She just happens to be in someone's backyard. It's the safest place for her kittens. Um, so and I can't encourage you enough to watch this video. If you go to our website, click on photos and videos. If you go all the way to the bottom, there's a video called Bringing Up Bobcats, and it was written and narrated by a little fifth grader from a school that we were working with. And it's Avery and these kittens, and it's a wonderful video. There was more than one strategy. Some of our most urban females really didn't keep the kittens anywhere for more than a few days. This was Bobcat Luna. You can see her two kitties. And these are all places that she moved them for a few days. She kept them in alleys. Um, she raised them. I don't know how. It seemed very insecure to me. But there was definitely more than one strategy. One of the things we learned was just how tough it is to be a female bobcat in the desert in Tucson. This is Bobcat Margaret. Right before she had kittens down in the Santa Cruz, she lived on Tumamoc Hill. This is what she looked like 8 weeks after the kittens were born. She is a skeleton compared to how she was. They work very hard for their kittens. They are gone from the kittens most of the time, hunting for themselves, hunting for the kittens. They bring food back for the kittens. They nurse the kittens for 3 months. It's amazing to me. The males do not help at all. In fact, if males come upon kittens that they did not father, they will kill those kittens because she will come back into estrus to try to have another litter. So we were humbled by our bobcat moms. I still am. Um, so this is our two females who lived on Tumamoc. You can see the den site cluster right there. They were denned within about 50 yards of each other, and this is a mother and a daughter. So Bobcat Margaret and her daughter Elsie. This situation, these aren't radioed bobcats. This was a person in Vail who contacted me. This female had come to his house and raised her kittens for 3 years in a row. And then one year, another female showed up. I suspect it was her daughter. Not only did they raise kittens together, they nursed each other's kittens, which is unheard of in the bobcat world. The conventional wisdom on bobcats is that they have no social relationships at all. And I think we disproved that. One of the best parts of doing research is that you end up with more questions and answers. And we certainly did with this study. Um, so again, some people are over the moon that they have females with kittens, and some people are scared to death that you can actually pay someone to come catch the mother and kittens and move them, which is a death sentence for the kittens and likely the mother. So we do have a handout, and I talk to people a lot about dealing with females with kittens. I think it's an amazing experience personally, but some people are very uncomfortable with it. Um, we believe that the large and apparently thriving bobcat population in and around Tucson should be a point of pride for this community. I think it's amazing. It's a reflection of historic and ongoing efforts to set aside large and small tracts of wildlands, protect travelways such as washes, the Santa Cruz River. I also believe that it shows peaceful coexistence between species is both possible and beneficial to both. I think this is amazing for people to get to have this experience. Um, if you are interested in any of our materials, if you go to our bobcatsintucson.net website, on the first ribbon, drop down Living with Bobcats, you can download all of these. If you go to the More button and drop down, you can look at our reports. There's a public report, which is an abbreviated version. It's about 20 pages. The full technical report's about 120 pages. And then there's still information on how to report bobcat activity. Well, I appreciate your time and attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has. So, whoops, hang on. Let me get, uh, oops, sorry, I'm trying to get where I can see. Okay, here we go. Uh,
Deb, you have a question?
Yeah, yeah, I have a question. Cheryl, when were the fatalities when they were increased, were those mostly younger bobcats, or uh, did you have an age range? Did you find that more of the babies were being? No, okay,
yeah,
no
no,
correlation there.
no, good question. But everything that we radio collared, with just a couple exceptions, they were all adults that we radio collared, and so the mortality was, in this particular case, the mortality was the adult mortality. Kitten mortality is really high, probably
Mhm.
in most bobcat populations, not just here. About 50% is pretty typical for kitten mortalities. But in most cases, we documented a little bit of our kitten mortality in road kills, but
Mm,
that wasn't included in that figure, by the way. And that was just because people knew the study was going on. They saw a dead bobcat, they would call us, and we could go out and retrieve it. But no, otherwise it was pretty much across the board. Wasn't age related at all.
okay, thank you.
Hmm.
Well,
Go ahead if you have another question.
yeah, I live in the foothills, and we see bobcats probably once a month, or a single bobcat. I'm assuming they're males, but they, just kind of wander around and uh,
Um, so
would
yeah, and
females.
so go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, no, just go ahead yourself.
I was just gonna say that so in a given area, there's a female, an adult female who lives there, and she may or may not share her home range with a daughter. I think it's quite common that they do share with an adult daughter. We had one situation where we had a mom who shared with a daughter, and then on either side of her was another daughter. So there were four of them there together. But then you will also have one or two or three males using that area.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, in just because you don't see kittens doesn't mean that there aren't kittens. So if she has her kittens in April, you won't see her with kittens until the end of the summer. And then even all the way through the fall, I would say at least half the time she stashes those kittens someplace and
Hmm.
goes and hunts and brings food back for them. And that's just because, kittens are no help when she's trying to hunt. And so you don't always see her with the kittens. So it could be a female, it could be adult male, but then the kittens will stay in the mom's home range until the following spring. So, for instance, right now, they'll be females will be having their kittens, their new litters in the next month or so. And last year's kittens might still be in the area, and then they'll slowly disperse if they're males. If they're females, they might stay there with her. Depends.
Thank you.
Hmm.
I have a question. 50% mortality with the kittens seems high.
Hmm.
What's the biggest threat, and what natural predators do bobcats have?
Well, so yeah, the 50% mortality, and they evolved a system that allows them to have more than one litter. So if they lose a litter, they can have a second litter, and that's why, because of such high mortality. And most of that occurs in that first few weeks, and it's just because the kittens are completely helpless. So she hides them someplace, but she's gone most of the time. She's going and hunting and back and forth, and she'll sneak in and out. And anything, if a raccoon finds them, a possum finds them, a dog finds, oh, I said possum, sorry, I'm talking Eastern here. We don't have very many possums in Tucson. A raccoon, a fox, a dog, any kind of a predator at that point in time will kill kittens. Other bobcats, I mentioned the male bobcats, as they get older, once they start traveling with her, we lost a lot of kittens to roadkills. That's a really common thing. But again, in a natural setting, any other predator, coyotes are a huge predator on bobcat kittens. And I think a huge predator in an urban environment and in a wild environment as well. So they don't have a lot of protection. And she, as far as defense goes, if she can, she'll defend them. But in many cases, you know, she doesn't have a choice. So that's why they have that system that they can try to have another litter if they lose their litter.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Cheryl. Um,
Uh-huh.
so you were saying that bobcats generally don't use detours like culverts and things like that to avoid roads.
Hmm.
And I know there's a trend to build wildlife crossings that go under big highways, for instance.
Hmm.
So that means they won't use them. Maybe they avoid big highways because they're more in concentrated in urban areas. What do you think about that whole?
Well, so I-10 is a complete barrier. Okay, so no one crossed. We had one of our males who went under an underpass a couple times at I-10 just to the other side, but essentially I-10 bisects our bobcat population. So the bobcats that are on the east of I-10 do not mix with the bobcats on the west. So that is a barrier totally. Otherwise, what it appears to be with the with culverts and other kinds of wildlife crossings is they use them as they're available, but they don't seem to detour to them. So they don't seem to go out of their way, for instance, to go to a wildlife crossing. I think that roads reach a certain size where it's just simply a barrier. Silver Bell Road was interesting to me because it was a barrier. A lot of our home ranges ended at Silver Bell. So in other words, they weren't crossing back and forth. We did have one male that I still get weekly reports on who's probably crossed Silver Bell 200 times. And you tell me how he does it. I'm not sure I could cross Silver Bell 200 times without getting hit on the highway. I mean, we lost two of our females there on Silver Bell. So definitely big highways are a definite issue for them. Other roads, I think they're just sort of part of their environment and they just cross them as they come to them. But there are animals that very actively use wildlife crossings, so I'm all for wildlife crossings. It just happens to be with our bobcats that they don't seem to make a big effort to, detour to go through a culvert or to avoid a road. I wish they did in some cases because it would probably mean that that mortality wasn't quite as high as it was.
Thank you.
One question, one comment. If you have a question, please raise your hand so we know who to do it next. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, regarding the bobcats using or not using wildlife corridors.
Mhm.
So you don't have, there's no evidence that bobcats are using the corridors that are that exist between here and Phoenix. I think there are at least a couple over
Yeah,
the freeways.
they do use them. They
They
definitely
do.
use them, but they don't so there's camera data for those, and absolutely bobcats cross back and forth.
Okay.
It's just that they don't make a detour to use them, so they use them as they come to them, basically.
Okay. Got it.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Anybody else have questions?
What's the typical litter size? Is it like 3 or 4 or?
Yeah, so it's typical is 2 to 3. They can have actually can have up to 5. The most that we had on our study area with our females was 3, but they can rarely have up to 5, and 4 is not common by any means, but it does happen. But yeah, they can. It's pretty remarkable that they could raise 5 kittens, but they're, like I said, they're amazing moms. They take really good care of the kittens and are just busy, busy, busy.
Okay, thanks.
Bill?
Thank you. I'm hidden in the cactus somewhere there. Um, any pattern to their activity levels? Are they just active all day, all night?
As far as, well, they definitely are nocturnal. Cats in general are nocturnal. But I think that urban bobcats are out and about more during the day than a lot of bobcats who only live in wildlands. Partially that's because if they're hunting birds, obviously birds are out during the day. Although there is a really cool video on the website of a bobcat taking a quail out of a tree where he's roosting at night. So they do figure that out. Um, but otherwise, they definitely take breaks during the day. I'll tell you a funny story on myself. When we set our collars up, I set a 4 hour delay. So if the collar didn't move for 4 hours, then I would get a email that said you have a mortality, and we would go investigate it. And so I thought, well, I'm going to change that to 2 hours and just see, if we're missing anything. Well, what I found out very quickly when I changed it to 2 hours is that they do indeed nap for at least 2 hours, because right away we started getting all of these mortality alerts. And when we go, the bobcat was long gone. They had just been taking a nap. And so one of the other people who was part of the study said, well, now you're doing a bobcat napping study, which was not our intent at all. But they will take several 3-4 hour breaks during the day, and then otherwise they're moving. They don't have, one of the things that's different about bobcats, and this is one way that I try to reassure people if they had a bobcat in their area, is except for when they have kittens, they don't stay in the same place day after day. They don't have a den. They don't have a specific place that they return to. The only time they return back to the same place over and over again is if they have kittens. Females have kittens stashed there. Otherwise, they are moving through their home range. day in and day out. They are busy. They move a lot. And even if a female with kittens, she'll only be there until the kittens are big enough, that they can go with her. But otherwise, they're super active, super busy. They cover most of their home range in a 2-week span. So they're moving around a lot.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Cheryl, having seen a couple of bobcats in our yard periodically, is it possible to tell looking at them whether they are male or female?
It takes a practiced eye. You can tell, you can always look for boy parts. That's always one thing to do. It's much harder to look for girl parts, but you can look for boy parts. What I tell people is that that you can distinguish individual bobcats pretty easily, and the best characteristic, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the tail pattern. So they have everything from a short tail, a 3-inch tail. Sometimes their tails are 6 or 7 inches long. Sometimes they have stripes on them. Sometimes they have white at the end. There's a lot of variation, and lots of times you can tell tail pattern, especially if you have a trail camera, you can differentiate different bobcats. Otherwise, it's just a size differential that you're looking at between males and females. Obviously, if you see more than one bobcat together, most of the time that's a female with kittens. Except during the breeding season, which is in February, you might see a male and female together for a short period of time. But otherwise, it's hard to tell, and I can't always tell sex. People send me a lot of pictures, and if it's an obviously big adult male bobcat, I can usually sort that out. But there's a young male and an adult female overlap. It's just hard to tell them apart. No easy way, I guess.
Thank you.
Hmm.
I have a question about, I can't see where the raise your hand thing is. So,
It's usually down at the bottom.
yeah, I don't see it on my bottom.
Okay.
But anyway, how about similarities or differences with mountain lions?
Oh,
Well, no, a lot of things are the same, of course. A cat is a cat is a cat, so many of the same adaptations. Bobcats, personality wise, lions are much more passive, much more sit and wait predators, not as willing to tolerate people and human activity or use human structures as bobcats are. Bobcats are amazingly flexible, ubiquitous species, and they just seem to be willing to tolerate humans. There's not very much overlap in prey. Bobcats, of course, primarily rabbits. Lions are tied very closely to deer populations. They will catch smaller prey and eat smaller prey, but day in, day out, lions are tied to deer populations. Bobcats are tied much more closely to rabbit populations. Lions will actively prey on bobcats. They will kill and eat bobcats. And so and they occur in the same areas. They've occurred in the same areas for hundreds of thousands of years, but certainly lions will prey on bobcats if they can.
Similar day-night activities and rest periods?
That's a good question. Like I said, the urban bobcats are a little bit different. Otherwise, lions are mostly nocturnal. Again, a lot of that has to do with when the prey are active, when the best hunting is. So rabbits are more active at night, deer are more active at night. And so in that case, that similarity exists. Like I said, when you get into an urban environment, it's a little bit different because the prey behavior changes.
Hmm.
Um, but basically very similar. Yeah.
Okay.
Any more questions? Well, then we will bid you adieu. Thank you very much, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Uh,
It was my pleasure.
yeah, well, great that you guys are doing things like this.
Thank
When
you.
are you going to
Yeah.
do one on mountain lions?
Oh boy, I would love to. So I got a really neat opportunity last year. My very first job with Game and Fish, I was a summer student. I'm aging myself now. In 1979, I got a job working for Game and Fish up near the Grand Canyon, and we were catching deer, radio calling deer as part of a deer mountain lion study. And the last day I was there, I got to help catch and radio collar a mountain lion. And 46 years later, last spring, when we were here, we had a mountain lion kill a deer. We found where he had just killed a deer, and we called the game and fish biologist, and he came up and set a foot snare around the deer, and it had a trigger on it that was a satellite trigger. So when the snare triggered, it told us that something was caught. And so we got to go out with a biologist and help drug the cat, radio collar him. It was a big male. He was a 150-pound male. It was amazing. And so it was a 46-year break for me in between getting to work on mountain lions. But honestly, now that I have done so much bobcat work, I love bobcats. Their personalities, their just amazing ability to adapt, to live with people is just amazing to me. I would love to. I will hopefully will continue working on bobcats, but two really neat experiences with mountain lions. They are amazing. It's
Oh, thank
it's
you.
a
Thank you.
absolutely.
You're
Well, I
getting
think
lots of hearts and applauses and thumbs up. I just want you to know, Cheryl.
oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Absolutely. Glad to
Thank you
hear
for
it.
your time. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
you bet. My pleasure.
And Deb, you need to say when the next one is.
Yeah, I was waiting for the right time to do that. Thank you all for attending today. I hope that you found it instructive and fun, as I did. Our next continuing education will be presented by Bob Scarborough, and that is on April 2nd. So look for that in member tracks, and hopefully we'll see you all then. Thank
That
you.
will be a live continuing ed lecture,
Right.
not
Not
Zoom.
not in Zoom.
Is that a fact?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's a fact. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you all.